Hey everybody, this is Perch, and Marvel is teasing the death of Doctor Strange coming this September 2021. Um, he's not going to actually die. Spoilers. He's they're not going to kill off Doctor Strange, and there's a number of reasons why. The biggest one being a giant movie that will happen next year with Doctor Strange, who is with Benedict Cumberbatch, is probably one of their top actors at this point. Remember, Tom Holland is technically doing the movies under Sony. That Benedict Cumberbatch is kind of their guy, and at least from what has been reported, is intending to be a larger part of the MCU and other pieces. So the idea that Marvel Comics is in preparation for this big movie going to kill off Doctor Strange, it's funny to think about in the sense of the comics being so out of sync with the movies, which of course we have seen in the past. But no, they're not going to actually kill Doctor Strange. Now, Marvel's announcing as the final saga of Marvel's Sorcerer Supreme. Sure. I've heard that there's plenty of ideas around passing the Sorcerer Supreme mantle on to someone else. They've done this before. It's wound up coming back to Doctor Strange. They're not going to allow the character to get, again, too out of sync with the movies. Now this kicks off, as we mentioned, in September of 2021. It sounds like a storyline that's going to kind of go down for a period of time. Now, Doctor Strange as a series has struggled to some extent. It's had in recent years, had Jason Aaron on it, it's had Donny Cates on it, had Mark Waid on it, but the title hasn't really popped in any kind of major way. And this is one of those cases where they really need it to. I think they do want to have a strong Doctor Strange title, particularly with the emphasis on the movies and everything else. But it's been this continual kind of struggle. So what is likely to happen here? Certainly, they want to create some level of bigger storyline to start hyping up and putting attention back on things. I'm in complete guess land here, but if this is going to be some level of storyline or limited series, if it's 5 issues and we're talking about taking us through the end of the year into January, February kind of time frame, that sets it up very nicely for a month or two breather, a big relaunch of a number 1 in concert with the movie, and that to me feels like the most likely case of what's going to happen. So some level of trial, some level of kind of just general bringing some attention back to the character. Maybe not unlike what they did with Wolverine and other, Thor and other characters in the past, but probably a little bit accelerated because I guarantee you they're not going to, they're not going to just let the character in the title go completely silent when the movie comes out. So in terms of kind of big news, that's one that kind of floated out there. It's not getting the same amount of attention, and probably why is because they have done this. They've done Captain Marvel turns evil. They've done various storylines like this where it's clear it is a storyline. It's clear that there's some initial marketing hype, and the commentary of the final adventures of Iron Man or the final adventures of Captain America or Thor or in this case Doctor Strange. Everybody knows it's not final. It's one of those those things that just it has a lot less meaning than in the past. I do believe, and I've heard at least, that Marvel is trying to gear up to an ongoing series again. They're fishing around for some writer to do it. I think there's a handful of talents out there. Speaking of writer changes, by the way, not related to Doctor Strange, but in terms of the overall shuffling of things. Ed Brisson has joined The Amazing Spider-Man as a co-writer, and it's there's no kind of indication of what all this means. It's only for one issue, at least at first, that we're seeing. And the thought process is that this is one of those cases where Amazing Spider-Man as a title, currently under Nick Spencer, is doing a lot of double shipping. They're doing this tie-outs. They're doing this Sinister Six war. They're doing the Chameleon Conspiracy. There's another event that is queuing up for October, and so there's just a continual increase of titles coming out of here that Nick Spencer is on. Last year, Nick Spencer did have Matt Rosenberg come in and co-write some of the issues during Last Remains, largely to keep up with the schedule. And that really feels like what we have going on here of kind of an additional writer. But kind of back to Doctor Strange, the question becomes, if you're going to have a new creative team on this book and you're going to do a big relaunch, who are the likely people that could do such a thing? I know Kelly Thompson at least has been discussed to some extent. She was writing Deadpool, and that book was canceled. There is expected to be a relaunch of that as well in the later part of the year. So that's one name. Ed Brisson, as I mentioned, why we got onto that with Spider-Man, is another name. I know that Dan Slott in the past has at least made some comments of wanting to do the character, but I think at this point is firmly kind of embedded with Fantastic Four and what he's doing. It feels unlikely that Mark Waid would come back to the title. They've done a couple launches with him. Al Ewing is another writer that's been tossed out a lot, but he's just increasing his portfolio of books quite a bit, and certainly now having Guardians of the Galaxy and Venom among other special things that he does, that feels unlikely. Ram V is another high possibility, I think, in terms of kind of interest of what that writer can do now that he is starting to do some work with Marvel. So there's a few different options in the mix there, but needless to say, the death of Doctor Strange starting this September, really, really unlikely that they're actually killing the character or making some big status quo change. Keep in mind, the character is the Sorcerer Supreme in the MCU. If they decide to take that mantle away and do something else with it, again, certainly they can. It's just they have gone to that well a few times in the last few years, and doing that again so quickly feels it would certainly lack some imagination and creativity if that is what they're going down. But overall, I think, we're entering into this kind of curious time with Marvel, where you have a number of books. The general numbers, if you're kind of taking a big step back and looking at things, Amazing Spider-Man continues to be the big book. You get special bumps from time to time from things like Thor and Hulk and Venom back when that was running with Donny Cates. So there's those kind of big books swirling. The X-Men lineup in general has kind of settled into the middle tier of titles. It's not the biggest selling title at Marvel, or really that close to it at this point. Some of the big relaunches, and I think certainly the interest that they're trying to do with Inferno and stuff in the fall is to push that lineup up. But overall, you've got a lot of books at Marvel that are settling into kind of that middle to lower kind of tier in terms of sales. They're kind of really stabilizing this 40,000 to 30,000 kind of watermark of titles. And certainly some books are doing higher now, but there's a lot of books kind of sitting in that sector. And Doctor Strange, if it was to be relaunched and didn't have, some real momentum behind it, a really strong creative team that customers could believe would stay with the book, it would fall right into that place. This is where, say, Captain Marvel is fitting. This is where Miss Marvel was, and if they reboot the title or restart it, then it's likely to sink there again. Marvel needs to figure out ways to kind of break more things up and out of that kind of rut, for lack of better words, that they've gotten themselves into. It becomes, if you look at kind of a publisher history of books and how sales work over time, having things kind of solidify right in that 30 to 40,000 copies sold range isn't the healthiest, particularly since the trades are not doing kind of gangbuster business. That's a heavy weight. And ultimately, it starts to drag things down because you want to be able to do crossovers and events and other things that are going to tie in some of these books. And if they're all kind of sitting there very solidly at that realm, it makes it harder to push them up. This isn't to say, please, if you're hearing my words and going, oh, this means Marvel's screwed. No, not at all. It just means that it's getting trickier for some of these books to find some big exposure. Amazing Spider-Man continues to do very well for the company, but others are kind of really sitting locked in that place. Black Panther toward the bottom end of that, Captain America toward the bottom end of that. Iron Man definitely hitting the bottom end of that. The Avengers is kind of at the top end of that. I mean, but that area is not a great place to sit. So whatever they're doing with Doctor Strange, 5-issue or so, that would be my guess of a Death of Doctor Strange storyline designed to hype and get some interest up in the title before it goes out with a brand new #1, a killer creative team and everything else. I would bet that whoever we see as a creative team for this Death of Doctor Strange story, in terms of the writer, is likely to be the writer for whatever relaunch follows. But we'll stay tuned for more announcements. But no, the idea that they're going to kill off this character right before the movie comes out, pretty unlikely. And there's been a long track record of them doing stuff like this before the movies, and it always finds a way. Sometimes not completely in alignment with the movie, but close to it. And I think that'll be the case here. Anyway, do you have any questions? Are you interested in Doctor Strange and his storyline? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.